This week on Instant Experts, love is in the air.
We've got French kisses, we've got Arctic passages, we've got adventures in the Aussie bush.
The honk comes of age in Melbourne.
Which our Victorians, I have had a sports awakening.
And we start our campaign tonight, The Greatest Living Adelaidean.
I am so excited because I know exactly who you're talking about.
Welcome back to Instant Experts, Big Beautiful Taco Edition. It's all the latest news explained by idiots, here to keep you sane in a crazy world. I'm Henry Lee, and as always, I'm here with my dear friend, the Honk. Honky, welcome.
Henry, what a pleasure to be back with you, my dear friend, and what a week. I mean, we say it every week, this is a show about crooks, fuckwits and morons. Obviously, we have a holy trinity, all three of those at once in the body of Donald Trump. But, you know, if this week was the Oscars, you'd have to say he'd be a chance to me for Best Supporting Actor at best. I mean, we've got Muppets, thugs, fucktaculars from every corner of the globe this week.
And what caught your eye in particular?
Well, look, ironically, having said all that, you know, the first story we've got to talk about is an Australian story, a local story, a follow-up to last week. And for that, we've got to say thanks to a listener of ours from Newcastle in Australia, Chainsaw Pete.
Chainsaw Pete, I wonder how he got that name.
I don't know.
Maybe you can let us know.
Yeah, he left us a voicemail about that. And he's talking, of course, about what story?
About the Liberal National Coalition getting back together.
Yeah, so he did the story last week. The two Conservative parties who normally fight elections in Australia together got murdered in the last federal election only a few weeks back. They split not long after that. It looked like it was all over. We speculated they probably would get back together, and in fact, that's exactly what happened.
So Mum walked out on Dad last week.
She did.
And this week she's back.
She's back.
What has changed, Honky?
Well, there's the official story and there's the actual story.
Right.
So the official story is they've done a deal on four key sort of policy areas that were really important to the National Party.
Right, all of which presumably waste money on stupid shit.
Yeah, but I mean, in fairness, it's stupid shit in regional Australia, which is what the National Party cares
Oh, right,
about.
so it's true blue Aussie stupid shit. It's the kind of stupid shit that appears in ads for utes.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, these poor people, these plucky salt-of-the-earth battlers, you know, struggling with no traffic, healthy outdoor lifestyle, you know.
Houses that cost less than $4 million.
Yeah, less than $26 billion. Yeah.
No wonder they need our help. So what were the policies, theoretically?
So the four theoretical policy demands from the Nationals the Liberal Party agreed to were, one, ending a moratorium on nuclear power.
Oh, yeah, let's do that, because we've got unlimited supplies of wind, solar, coal and gas, so we definitely need nuclear power stations.
100%, you understand. Establishing a $20 billion regional fund.
Yeah, because that will be used for useful stuff rather than just building stuff we don't need in National Party seats.
Yeah,
Yes.
for pork barrelling, yeah. Allowing the breakup. Number three is allowing the breakup of major supermarket chains if they engage in anti-competitive behaviour.
That just means Coles and Woolies need to pay farmers more for fruit and veg, so we pay more at the checkout.
Yeah, indeed, of course. And the number four was improving mobile coverage in regional areas.
All right, let's spend even more money on the NBN rather than just getting satellite internet by calling Starlink tomorrow.
Yeah, even though it's, it makes you want to throw up because it involves
giving money to Elon Musk. That's
Indeed.
true.
But anyway, we said that was the official story. The real story. Here's a real story, which
sounds like bullshit, right?
If it sounds like bullshit, smells like bullshit, it is bullshit. The truth actually is this is not the first time it's happened. As Instant Experts, ours truly made it happen. Because, as you said, we compared last week the Nats and the Libs to sort of mum and dad, you know, looking at each other over the breakfast table after 38 years of marriage, you know, thinking they'd somehow do better out there in, like, people land.
Yeah, as if they were somehow smoking hot 25-year-olds in hot demand rather than 75-year-olds with health problems.
Yeah, and we were like the kids, right? We were like the kids. We were like mum and dad. Who the fuck are you kidding? Who are you kidding? Yeah. And also we were like over dad, having dad at our place in the living room, like screaming at the TV when he's watching, like, Sky and, you know, blowing up the bathroom with, like, his Chernobyl-esque monster dumps.
Yeah, and I wasn't a fan of Mum bringing back her 26-year-old lover to our place.
The guy with the pierced testicles from the Greens, yeah.
Exactly. And it's, you know, it's not that endearing to hear your mother on the job at the best of times.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, but you're being polite. It's basically covering your ears with pillows when she announces that he's found the G-spot through her butt. Or something horrendous, right?
Yeah, so Mum's had a pretty wild week, Honko.
Well, we talked about last week and this week. I mean, Mum's been free for the first time in 38 years. And she, you know, Mum is the National Party, right? So she has explored all avenues with many other parties.
Right, obviously the guy from the Greens we talked about last week, Brock Lee.
Yeah, well, that was Saturday night.
Right.
And then on Sunday, Brock Lee's mate came over as well. And they had a vigorous policy discussion with Mum and a spit roast.
Isn't Brock Lee vegan?
Yeah, but Mum's not. Mum loves meat.
And what did you do on Monday?
Well, Monday she tried a multi-party coalition, didn't she? You told me this, with some very deep I mean, presumably very deep probing of some key issues. But in the end, it was too much because everyone's pushing in different directions, different policy directions at once. And it's just uncomfortable.
I'd imagine it'd be hard to get a word in.
Very hard. Really hard to get a word in.
So she came back to Dad.
She came back to Dad.
And what was Dad up to when Mum was gallivanting?
Well, as you might expect, it was slightly sadder for Dad. I mean, Dad thought he was going to be, smoking hot, silver fox. Dad tried Tinder, I think
he's looking for Sydney Sweeney out there.
Yeah, and Dad got on Tinder, didn't go that well.
Yeah.
He tried Grindr, he had better luck there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
but he was down on his knees, wasn't he?
He was still down on his knees even on Grindr. He tried to keep a stiff upper lip. But in the end...
He just wanted Mum to return.
He just wanted Mum.
Yeah.
And Mum said to us, the kids, she said, in the end, your father's policies, they're not the best. They're certainly not the biggest, but they're the ones she knows.
That's right.
Yeah.
And let's be frank, she only wants to think about this stuff 10 minutes a week.
Absolutely.
Too many other things to be getting on with.
Yeah.
There's the job, the kids, although they're grown up, the garden,
yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and the garden in the rural areas, I mean, the gardens are huge, right? I mean, she said, your father and I moved there in the 70s, and, back in the 70s, having a huge bush out the back, that was the style, wasn't it?
The expectation's a little bit different now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, we got to wish the coalition partners well in their twilight years. I mean, we said it was going to happen, it happened. So that's the big story that caught my eye first up.
Well, we like to start the show also by shouting out to our listeners all over Australia and all over the world.
Yes.
Of course, listeners in every capital city of Australia, except Darwin, oddly. So if there's someone in Darwin that you know, please let them know about the show.
Yes.
And speaking of regional Australia, the fruit capital in Shepparton. And
in Victoria,
a little further east at the junction of the Ovens and King Rivers, the food basket of Wangaratta.
Hello, regional Victoria, and thank you for all the steak and grapefruit.
And we have listeners all around the world, including Denver, Colorado, home, of course, of the Denver Broncos and their home ground, the Mile High Stadium.
Hospitality at Mile High Stadium is, I hear it's excellent.
We've got Kingston, Jamaica, home of the famous cricket ground, Sabina Park, keeping the sporting venue theme.
Yeah, as 10cc said, we don't like cricket, we love it.
And Epsom in Surrey, it's an hour south of London, and of course the home of the famous racecourse, Epsom Downs, where they have been racing since 1661.
Wow.
Yeah, it's best known for the Derby, which is actually on next weekend, June 6 and 7. Big event on the English racing and social calendar.
Actually, is a Derby, other than a hat, what is a Derby?
A Derby is a staying race for 3-year-olds, so it's a mile and a half or 2,400 metres in Australia, or 2,500 actually at VRC for other reasons. But the Oaks, and then the Oaks, they have an Oaks as well, which is the same race, but for fillies, female horses.
Yep.
And it's got an interesting history, the Derby.
Here we go. Settle in, kids.
The first Oaks was run in 1779, and the first Derby was run a year later in 1780, and they were organised by a guy called Edward Smith Stanley.
Right. Was he a member of the Greens, or was he known as Marmaduke, 8th Lord of Ponsley?
Well, pretty much. He was actually the 12th Earl of Derby.
Right.
And the Oaks was the name of his estate.
Of course. Lucky they didn't name the races after his job or his passion. It would have been called what? The slavery and the buggery.
That was a bit harsh. They were more the land-owning types than the slavers. They used to own a lot of Lancashire and probably still do, the Derbies.
Yeah.
And in the English way, they've sort of bobbed up in all sorts of places over the centuries. So the original Lord Stanley, one of the early Earls of Derby, was the stepfather of Henry VII, and he was given the title Earl of Derby by Henry after the Battle of Bosworth Field. And he got it for agreeing to betray King Richard III.
That's the a horse, my kingdom for a horse?
It was. It was the last battle of the War of the Roses between the houses of Lancaster and York, all the way back in 1485.
Right.
And luckily, Instant Experts correspondent William Shakespeare was on the scene.
I feel like his work might last a little bit longer than this podcast. I'm just putting it out there.
And his grandson,
the
14th Earl of Derby, that is the grandson of the 12th Earl of Derby, the Derby and Oaks guy.
Yeah.
It was a guy called Edward George Jeffrey Smith Stanley.
Come on, you're making it up now. You're making shit up now.
Any chance you can have more names, right?
Yeah.
He was actually a 3-time Prime Minister of England.
Was Paul Stanley from Kiss? Was he? He was not a later descendant.
I think he might have been a nephew or something.
Right, yeah, gotcha, yeah.
So that Lord Stanley, the 14th Earl of Derby, had the notable distinctions of being, firstly, the longest-serving leader ever of the Conservative Party, 22 years.
Jesus Christ.
He was Prime Minister 3 times, as we mentioned, and yet he never had a parliamentary majority.
You ever think about joining up with the Nationals? Because it's perfect.
And lastly, for our Canadian listeners and other ice hockey fans, the Stanley Cup, which is the main trophy in the NHL.
I've heard of that, yep.
That was donated by the 16th Earl of Derby, another Lord Stanley, in
course.
1892 when he was Governor-General of Canada.
The thing I like is that all the Lord Stanleys, the thing I like about all the Lord Stanleys got their job strictly on merit, not just by being bored and not being dead.
No, that's right. They all worked their way up from the top.
Across from the top. Up and across from the top.
Okay, on with the show, Honky. American Carnage, always a major portion of Instant Experts. So much to choose from this week. But in the spirit of the times, we thought we'd try to capture as much of Trump's horseshit as possible in one story.
Yeah.
And that's why we've gone with the one big, beautiful bill. And now I know you love reading legislation,
I do. I love it.
and you've taken a thorough look at this one, haven't you?
I've certainly looked at it more than Trump has, that's for sure. I mean, that's sort of cliff notes on the Trump administration is always this. Whatever they accuse others of is what they're doing.
Yes.
And whatever they say it is, it definitely is not.
Right. So when they call it one big, beautiful bill, you know there's going to be hundreds of little ugly pieces of shit in it.
Yeah, and this one is exactly that, does not disappoint.
Mm-hmm.
Here are some of the highlights. Americans, get this, Americans on $17,000 to $51,000 a year will be $700 worse off.
Right.
Americans on less than $17,000 a year will be $1,000 worth off.
How can you be $1,000 worse off if you're on less than $17K a year? That's like more than 6% of your income.
It's unbelievable.
At best.
If you're in the top 0.1% of the United States earners, on the other hand, you'll be an average of $390,000 better off a year.
Thank God for that. So kill the poor to feed the rich.
Totally.
What are the other highlights, Honko?
There's of course, they're spending on the critical infrastructure of ICE, the deportation.
To lock as many people up as possible.
Of course, yeah, preferably
very productive when they're in jail doing nothing.
Great, and preferably citizens who should never have been in jail in the first place.
That's right. It's very cheap to provide people free accommodation and free meals for indefinite periods of time.
You're joking, of course. It's wildly expensive, which is why you can get this. Between now and September 2029, the ICE budget for transport and removal is going up 20 times from $721 million to $14.4 billion.
Right. That's the kidnapping budget.
That's the kidnapping
Transport
budget.
and removal, that's the child catcher. Yeah. He's out there with the butterfly net and the little car.
And then the black site, we're not going to tell you where they are, budget, the detention budget, goes
Sweets and lollies. Sweets and lollies.
Goes from $3.4 billion to $145 billion. Now, that is an increase. That's an increase of
$145 billion for detention.
That is an increase of 4,700% by my calculation.
Jesus
this
Christ.
is going to allow up to 100,000 people to be detained at any one time.
Where are they staying? Are they staying at Mar-a-Lago?
It's basically the MCG, isn't it?
So 100,000 people are detained at any one time, right?
Yeah.
And let me guess, the operators of the detention centres are somehow tied up with Trump and cronies.
What are these two companies?
Geo and Core Civic. I think they were related to the old Blackwater group.
Oh, of course.
Before they changed their name after various scandals.
Yeah.
And Tom Holman, whose literal title is US Border Czar.
Yes.
So nice, he's got a Russian.
Yeah, that's good.
Russian
Handy.
title. And US Attorney General and friend of the show, the great idiot Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
Are both former consultants to or lobbyists for Geo. I think last week we said she was a lobbyist for Qatar as well.
Yeah. She's very busy. She's very busy in the lobby, that's for sure. She's in the lobby a lot.
She is.
But the kicker, of course, is that despite all of Trump's bullshit about government waste, and Doge and all that crap, this bill increases the budget deficit in the US, does not decrease it, right?
Right. So it's been going on about waste, fraud and mismanagement for months.
Yeah.
And now he's increasing the deficit.
Exactly. The US federal deficit has, from Reagan onwards in 1980, has increased under every Republican president and decreased under every Democratic president.
Right. So maybe it is, as advertised, one big, beautiful bill. But a bill like the ones you get for your electricity.
Yeah, except Trump never pays his bills.
No, indeed. Now, Honky, we talked last week about the taco trade, and that's become a meme all over the world in the ensuing days. There was a term coined by UK Financial Times, another one with the pink pages, to describe Trump's tariff policies.
Yeah. And just remind, what does it mean again?
It stands for Trump always chickens out. So the idea is that Trump announces a ridiculous tariff, e.g. 245% on China. The stock market plummets.
Yeah.
You can load up by a heap of stocks because Trump is going to back down like he's backed down to Putin 50 times.
Yeah.
The stock market rallies and you make a fortune.
Yeah. We decided to try it this week, right?
That's right. So Trump announced a 50% tariff on the EU effective 1st of June, which is this Sunday.
Yeah, so we decided to try the whole thing. So you and I, we jumped on a cheap flight to Paris as soon as we heard the tariff was being imposed.
And tell our listeners what we picked up.
We went on a European spending spree. We went nuts. We bought a gabillion Gitan cigarettes. We bought goats from Greece. hitmen from Sicily. Like, we're to England.
They're the best.
They're the best. We got train strikes in England. We bought a whole lot of train strikes, some damp. We bought some damp. Yeah.
And sure enough, Trump almost immediately announced that he's not enforcing the EU tariffs. Shock me.
And that means, of course,
we've got more Sicilian hitmen.
Yeah, and their hits are much, much cheaper.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Now, I liked Trump's defense when he was asked about the taco trade. A journalist said, they're laughing at you, basically, saying you're always chickening out. And his response was, you call that chickening out, I call it negotiation.
Yeah, right.
Go, okay, boomer. Now, the beauty of it all is, Honky, all the tariffs, it turns out, are illegal, or at least ultra vires.
Who could believe these ridiculous tariffs were not something the president could do?
It's been a long time since I was at law school, but ultra vires means above power or outside power from memory. Tell us about that.
So some little family wine company in New York challenged the power of the president to impose all these widespread tariffs with the US Court of International Trade, I think it's called.
Right.
And the argument was the power to levy tariffs sits with Congress, not the president, right? That's the argument.
Well, I think that's pretty clear in the US Constitution, isn't it? That's in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, I believe, the taxing and spending clause.
There's an exception to that, right?
Right.
President can, in certain circumstances, exercise that power, but it's got to be a national emergency under this thing called the IEPA, which is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
Yes.
And so, as we said, the only problem is the US Court of International Trade has ruled that Trump's use of that so-called emergencies, which he's relied on, are complete bullshit.
Which they clearly are. And the first one he alleged was a fentanyl emergency, which he pinned on China, Mexico and Canada, despite more fentanyl going to Canada from the US than the other way around.
Yes, that's complete bullshit. What was the second one?
And the second one was the US's trade imbalance with other countries, which is not an emergency, that's just trade.
Yeah, exactly.
Some countries you buy more from than others, and some you sell more to than others.
Yeah, so this first court, the US Court of International Trade, has said that Trump doesn't have this power. Now, that court's order has been only temporarily stayed by an appeals court, but that original order by the US Court of International Trade will almost certainly end up holding up.
Yeah. Yeah, so Liberation Day is sort of becoming Humiliation Day, or at least Do Nothing Day.
Yeah. And it's part of a broader theme, really, isn't it, with Trump?
Well, he's losing a lot of court decisions.
Yeah.
And they send out their attack dog, Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
The human penis.
You like to call him the human penis.
Yeah, well, he looks like one.
Yeah.
And he's an absolute cock. So,
totally is, yeah.
And Stephen Miller is out there saying that the courts, so he was saying they're leftist, activist globalists, they have a little list of
insults,
insults. But because they're losing so much, he's upgraded that to communists. He's now calling them communists.
Yeah. Aren't communists the ones without functioning courts and like totalitarian governments?
Exactly. The governments that can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And courts that can't stop them. So he's supposed to be Republican. He's supposed to be the wunderkind of
small government
and freedom.
And
he's just an old dick on young shoulders.
Yeah, he's taking a lot of L's, as they say, a lot of losses. He'd be better off if they actually followed the law for once, wouldn't they?
Correct. He's just the guy who blames the ref rather than actually scoring more points.
See the name they've given further to your human penis. See the name they've given him, Stephen Miller, online. They've been calling him Pee Wee German.
Well, that's very fair. Okay, Honky, quick shots. The one that jumped out at me this week was the ban on international students at Harvard, number one, and number two, the freeze on taking international students across America. So they've decided to pause all applications to be an international student in America. So if you're an Aussie at Harvard now, or an Aussie planning to study in the US later in the year, you're absolutely rooted. This ban on international students at Harvard has had devastating consequences for one international student in particular.
One who's very close to us on the show. We feel this personally, right?
Yeah, and he'd hatched a plan to do a PhD at Harvard as a means of reuniting with his secret American lover.
This is a heartbreaking story. What was the thesis title?
It was entitled Deep in the Northwest Passage.
Yeah.
Cross-cultural mating rituals between Vikings and diplomatic visitors, 800 AD to last weekend.
Oh, well, that would have been what a fascinating area of study.
Yeah, we'll talk, of course, of Eric the Viking.
Eric the Viking, yeah, who had a torrid romance, as we've reported before on the show, with Second Lady, the Vice President's wife, Usha Vance, during her visit to Greenland, and he wants to rekindle a flame. The man has not been the same since.
Well, let's have a listen.
He sent us a voicemail about this. Yeah, we've got to have a listen. It's shocking.
It is Eric the Viking. Honk. I am very upset. The Irishman has disrespected us. The Irishman has disrespected her parents. Vikings respect our elders. We lift them on our shoulders. The Irishman attacks foreigners. The Irishman attacks foreign students. The Irishman attacks Christian Lakshmi. The Irishman attacks what is good. The toothless hillbilly Irishman should beg for forgiveness. He is dirt. He is rotten. He is dog.
Honky, he said that he's very upset. The Irishman has disrespected Usher. He's disrespected her parents. Vikings respect our elders. We lift them on our shoulders. He attacks foreigners, the Irishman. The Irishman attacks foreign students. Christian Lakshmi, he's got the Hindu gods in there.
Yeah.
He attacks what is good. And he says the toothless hillbilly Irishman should beg for forgiveness. He is dirt, he is rotten, he is dog.
Yeah, his English is getting better. Toothless hillbilly. He's learning a bit of idiom. That's impressive.
Yeah, but he's not a happy man, is he?
No, I feel it breaks my heart. I mean, this is meant to be a fun show, but I'm really, but there's a lump in my throat. But speaking of the Irishman, did you note that Usher Vance's husband, BJ Vance, the vice prostate, did you see he was in the Vatican this week?
I did. The pontiff meeting the vice prostate.
Yeah, and people were obviously very nervous, after because he famously only a few weeks ago insisted on meeting Pope Francis on Easter Sunday, and His Holiness dropped dead almost immediately afterwards.
Yeah, with a man of hours.
Yeah, but you see the video. The meeting was pretty excruciating.
My real question is: Pope Leo alive?
He's alive. That's the positive. So he's not just the first American Pope, but he also has a new distinction, right?
Well, he's the first Pope ever to survive a meeting with JD Vance. The other one that caught my eye was the meeting we mentioned last week with, between the president of South Africa with Trump in the Oval Office, and Trump was confronting Ramaphosa with allegations of a genocide against white people in South Africa.
White South African farmers, yeah.
His OJ-style glove was a photo of a whole bunch of graves with white crosses.
Yeah, and body bags. Only a couple of problems with that. Which is the journalist took the photos, has verified, number one, they're of black dead people, not white people, and they're from the Congo. Right. And then a video appeared this week of Trump in the Oval Office talking sort of a follow-up.
Right.
Which was pretty remarkable.
To be fair, there has been genocide in the Congo.
Yeah, a lot, but of black people.
By other black people.
Yeah, by the black people. And he was referring to the Congo this week, and he said he didn't know where it was.
Case closed.
But it leads us to this big question, right, which a lot of people are starting to speculate, which is Trump actually losing it?
If they accuse somebody else of it, then
exactly,
they're doing it. So they're accusing Biden of being senile. That means
so,
Trump is senile. That's what that means.
So at West Point Military Academy, like it's the most prestigious military academy in the country, right?
Yeah.
Trump, as the president often does, spoke at the graduation ceremony.
The army one, yeah.
Had a script, but he went off script very early.
Try and get out of it and cite sore feet or bunions or
what was it?
toothache. Bone spurs. Yeah.
But instead of following the script, he improvised for an hour. Started to assert that, everyone's joining the military now that he's president again. And he said that nobody joined the military while Biden was president.
Hang on, this is a graduation ceremony this week, right?
Yeah.
And you're there for 4 years?
Yeah.
So 4 years ago, wasn't Biden president?
Yeah. So by definition, he's talking to people who must have joined when Biden was president, telling them that they did not join when Biden was president. Yeah. And it's prompted this new term that people are now using, which is sane washing, where they're accusing journalists and commentators of, taking Trump's either not publishing everything he says or trying to give it some rational spin. They call it sane washing.
Yeah, it's exactly what they're accusing Biden of.
Of course, yeah.
Honky, now moving to Australian news,
yeah.
We were going to talk about our treasurer Jim Chalmers' monumentally stupid idea to introduce an unrealised capital gains tax, but I think we're a bit short of time.
I don't know why you call it like a monumentally stupid. What is wrong with trying to tax money that you haven't made?
Well, I guess that's what you get from a treasurer with a PhD in political science, not economics.
Yeah, but also don't forget, taxing money you haven't made makes sense to governments because they're always spending money they don't have. Right? So it makes perfect sense, right?
That's very fair.
Yeah.
But the story we did want to talk about was brought to us by a listener, Sam from Sydney.
Oh, yes.
But Sam's originally from Adelaide.
Yes.
And he sent this message. He said, last week's episode made me go down the Terence Tao rabbit hole. You can imagine how famous a kid he was in Adelaide in the 80s. Unbelievably, he does not have an Order of Australia, despite possibly being the most brilliant Australian on the world stage ever. Now, Sam's no slouch in his own right. He's a very successful CEO and he's literally a Rhodes Scholar, so that's high praise indeed. So Terence Tao is basically regarded as one of the world's preeminent mathematicians. He won the World Maths Olympiad when he was 13 or 14. Yeah. And he's a winner of the Fields Medal, which is the Nobel Prize for mathematicians, essentially. Yeah. And he's published 300 research papers on all sorts of weird and wonderful mathematical subjects.
Yeah, he's absolutely brilliant guy. We talked about him last week. And we talked about him in the context of him having lost that Olympiad the first time at the age of about 6 or something to the guy who's now the former mayor of Bucharest, who's now the president of Romania.
Yeah. Anyway, so the point of the story is Terence Tao is just Terence Tao. He doesn't have any Australian honours at all.
Yeah. So how do you get these honours?
Well, basically someone has to fill out a form. It's not that complicated.
So basically no one is rallied yet to sort of nominate him. We've got to start a campaign, don't we?
Yeah, we should. And what should we go for, Honky?
Well, so talk us through them. What are the honours again?
Well, you've got your OAM as the entry level
Yep.
model. That's the Medal of the Order of Australia.
Yeah.
My dad's got one of those.
Really? What for?
He does, yeah, for services to education.
Obviously a notable exception to that. Despite you, they gave it to him, did they?
Indeed, yeah. There's nothing wrong with the basic OAM.
No.
It never lets you down. Super reliable.
Yeah. It's your Camry of Australian honours.
It's basically for normal people doing great work for the community.
Yeah.
But we can probably do a bit better. So you want to go up at least one level. That's AM.
Yep.
That's your member of the Order of Australia. Then it's AO.
Yeah, now what's that one?
That's the officer of the Order of Australia.
Yep.
You're sort of in the Australian cricket captain zone. There's another one up from that, which is the top one, which is the AC. That's the companion.
The companion of the Order of Australia, right?
You can only award 35 of those a year.
Yeah, so who gets those?
That's sort of your Governor General, famous politicians, and strangely enough, Keith Urban.
Yeah, is that for services to shit our songs? It's bad hair.
But I want to get the whole set. I want Terence Tao, OAM, AM, AO, AC, AK, KBE as well.
So you reckon he's our greatest ever Adelaidean, and you want him to be, Terry Tao to be our first ever Instant Experts campaign, right?
Yeah.
There's only one problem with the premise of what you're saying.
Right.
The premise of what you're saying, he's this great unrecognised Adelaidean.
But those things are plainly true, Honky.
No, they're not true. You're forgetting someone much more significant than him.
From Adelaide.
Right.
Paul Kelly, the singer?
No, he sucks. He absolutely sucks. No, he sucks. No.
Huge call.
Yeah, I reckon all over Australia there are secretly like these, the equivalent of like sort of like AA groups of people in private, confidentially. What happens in the room stays in the room, confessing to each other they don't really like Paul Kelly.
All right, Mark Rashuda.
I don't know who that is.
I
Who
knew
is
you
that?
would know Mark Rashuda.
Fuck is Mark Rashuda.
Brownlow medalist.
Yeah.
Premiership player for the Adelaide Crows. He's got a grandstand named after him at Adelaide Oval, which I'm sure you've never been to.
Never, couldn't give a fuck. No. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm talking about an elite global athlete from a global sport with actual skill involved.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Does it involve men in tights?
It does, well, not on this occasion.
No.
Involves women in tights. I'm talking, of course, of Adelaide's greatest ever export, Rhea Ripley.
Right.
Probably the greatest living pro wrestler in the world, male or female.
I thought her name was Rhonda.
No, you're thinking of Ronda Rousey, the former UFC person, woman who then went into
She became
pro
a wrestler,
wrestling.
didn't she? Yeah.
She became a wrestler. No,
Right.
Rhea Ripley is the most terrifying, the tallest, the most staggeringly powerful, by far the most charismatic, talented pro wrestler in the world, in my opinion, at the moment. And she always bills herself, which is true, as being not just from Australia, but from being from Adelaide, South Australia. So surely she's got to get it before Terry Tao.
So you're saying...
Yeah, I am.
You're saying you got a choice between the world's greatest genius...
Yes.
And the so-called world champion of a fake sport.
Listen, don't make me walk out of the show during a record. She's a legend. She's a smoking hot goddess.
Okay, we've got to leave this to the listeners.
Yeah.
So we've got to get a knight or a dame next to Australia Day.
Yeah.
So Terence Tao.
Yes.
Or Dame Rhea Ripley.
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is let us know by text or voicemail or email.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you could.
But I'm backing Terence Tao.
Well, there's another solution, right? Which is we could fill out both forms, right? And then at the ceremony, the two of them could have a fight, like in a steel cage, surrounded by barbed wire, broken glass, and flames, and we'll see who's the greatest Adelaidean after that.
Yeah. Okay. But only one condition, Honky.
Yeah. What's that?
They've got to do a maths test first.
Oh, you didn't. I didn't quite think that one through, did I?
Now, Honky, that takes us nicely to sport, and this week you had something of a coming-of-age adventure.
I did have a coming-of-age adventure. I'm a new man this week, and this will thrill listeners in our southern states. I've spent a lot of time on this show saying that AFL, which is one of the 6,000 codes of football we play in Australia, also known as Aussie rules, is a bunch of bullshit with no rules, and I've always said that, anyone in Sydney
Have you got
claims...
something to tell us, Honky? Have you changed?
I'm coming to it. I'm building up slowly. And I've always said that people in Sydney who claim to like AFL are only legit if, in fact, they come from an AFL playing state. If they're from Sydney or New South Wales and claim to like AFL, it's a class statement because they're trying to say that they're not so fancy, they like rugby, but not too classless as to like
NRL. We'll arrive at the
NRL.
point at some stage.
You're very rude to me. It's a chatty show. So what happened was, it's actually your fault.
Right.
I have
That's my fault then.
I've had a conversion to AFL.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so how did this this happen?
So
Honky?
I came down to Melbourne to record the show in our secret Melbourne studio with you.
You did, yes.
And you cruelly abandoned me for the night. I was on my own.
I had work commitments, Honky. You know, the ones that pay money, unlike this show.
Right, okay, yeah. So I was forced to walk out solo into the dark
I
of
pay
night.
money each week to sit with you.
Listen, I'm worth it. I'm worth it. Worth the few dollars that it costs. I was forced to walk solo out into the dark of night in Melbourne, hoping to find a friend in a strange town in a crazy world.
Did you try the park?
I was looking for love in all the wrong places. I was forced to drown my sorrows at where else? The Morning Star Hotel.
Of course.
Friend of the show.
My local, where I'm leading the tipping competition.
Oh, God. We mentioned that again. Are we fucking great?
Did they want to know my tipping secrets?
Nobody wants to know.
Did you give them the inside word?
I don't even know what the inside word is.
That is true, but I'm back to having 2 co-leaders, so I'm suspicious.
You reckon they're just trying to use me to get to you?
The old Williamstown honey trap. They've been running it for 200 years.
Can I bracket you? Nobody in the world except you gives a fuck about your tipping competition. Anyway, I'm at the Morning Star. I'm crying into my beer.
Yeah,
and I meet these 2 guys, Nick from Melbourne and Perrin from Perth.
Right.
And they're watching the Geelong Cats play the Western Bulldogs,
right,
who are AFL teams, just in case you don't know.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for the scoop.
I looked a bit confused, and they started to explain the rules. And I said, what a bunch of bullshit. There are no rules in AFL. You guys are fucking pussies.
And they broke a bottle over your head.
They break a bottle over my head. Then I cut a couple more beers, and then the funniest thing happened. I started to understand the rules a bit more.
Oh, yeah.
And then no one felt like more beers, and I got some very nice wine, but I'm not going to drink a whole bottle by myself, let's just say. For the purpose of argument. So I started sharing the wine with these guys, and when we started to share the wine, we had a second bottle, and then I could see the whole field. The whole strategy started to open up to me.
Were you offered a coaching contract at this point?
No. So then you can't drink any more wine, and it's that time of the night, you've got to have a couple of whiskeys, right? At that point, the majesty of the game revealed itself to me.
What time is it? 8:15.
It's getting pretty late at this point.
Are we is it the end of the first 40?
So the game is on. The game is on, and then they started talking to me, asking me what brought me to town, and I said, "Shut the fuck up, yuppie! Some of us locals are trying to watch the game here."
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you pretty much mastered AFL by the end of this night at the Morning Star.
Anything you want to know, I can sort you right out.
Yeah. What was your takeaway?
Oh, look, tough beat, mate, for the doggies. Tough beat, our local team.
Our local team. Now.
Yeah. The ref either doesn't know the rules, or he's on the take, or he should have got his Specsavers, mate.
Well, Honky, I'm sure our listeners will be excited to hear your
especially Yappy, young Yappy.
That's
from some
right.
Weeks
you
ago.
showed him. They'll be excited to hear your insights for the rest of the season. Now, Honko, before we leave sport, I should say that the Spiceman, a listener from Cape Shank in Victoria, beautiful part of the world, is an avid Liverpool fan, and he wanted us to rubbish Manchester United for their appalling season in English football. And he said, and I quote,
"Yes,
this is the Spiceman, enjoying your commentary on West Tigers and their fuck-uppery. Maybe time for instant experts to delve into the greatest season of fuck-uppery in history and dissect Manchester United's season from hell and the decisions that led to it. No crooks as far as I know, but fuckwits and morons by the busload."
Tough words.
Yeah, tough words indeed. But unfortunately, Spiceman, we're already running a bit long, so we won't have time to tell our listeners that the once mighty United came 16th. They won't play European football.
Mm-hmm.
They're on their 7th manager since Sir Alex Ferguson retired.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, they sacked the one with the best win rate, 60%, Eric Ten Hag, in favour of a guy with a 25% win rate.
Yeah, it's very West Tigers of them.
Yeah, and we don't have time to say that Liverpool reclaimed their title as the most successful club in England from United this week with their 20th league title and their 69th major trophy. So
we don't have time to say any of those things.
We don't have time at all. So Liverpool fans like us will just have to gloat crassly in private. All right, folks, that's all we have time for. Thanks for your company as always. You can find us in the usual locations, especially this one.
And all over socials, all the usual places. Please remember, on our website, you can go on there and send us a voicemail. You can send us a text direct from our show notes.
And share and rate the show. They're the things that help us the most.
They do.
Now, to take us out, Honky, what have we got? We're usually close with some kind of musical number.
We've talked about a lot of sort of negative stuff, but, really we're optimists and we're romantics, wouldn't you say? We love on this show.
We do.
And we've talked about love a lot. We've done
like
a lot of love
you and the
stories.
Morning Star Hotel.
Like me and AFL. It's a lifelong love story. Me and Rhea Ripley. You and Terry Tao. We've talked about the Liberals and Nationals. We've talked about Usha Vance and Eric the Viking, although that one brings me to tears. We've talked about BJ Vance, the vice prostate, and Trump's nappies. There's a lot of love stories.
Indeed.
And we have another one.
Okay.
So we got this voicemail from another listener of ours who's known as the Moose from Clermont-Ferrand in France.
Yeah, well, let's have a listen.
Yeah.
Greetings from France. This is the Moose. and suggesting that this week maybe you look further afield and look just the US. Of particular interest is when President Macron got off a plane in Vietnam and got smacked in the face by his wife and denies that this was a domestic dispute and rather the two of them were just fooling around. Enjoy.
Okay, so this really happened, Honky.
You did. This is a weird relationship, isn't it? So Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, is married to a woman named Brigitte Trogneux. She is 25 years his senior. They met when
25 years.
They met when she was married with 3 kids and teaching a theatre workshop that he was taking as her student when she was 39 and he was 15.
No.
A romantic relationship started, quote, according to the biography, quote, later,
right,
to which I say, bullshit. That's later in inverted commas, that's code for hand jobs behind the canteen. What's French for canteen? What's French for hand jobs behind the canteen?
Wow.
And they got married in 2007.
Right.
Now, we said a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Trump being a racist, and he may as well have said that African Americans are a very musical people.
Yeah.
It's also a racial cliche that said the French are a very passionate people.
Yeah. But getting pushed in the face by your wife, that's more than passion.
Yeah, and look, as Moose says, we were just fooling around defence is clearly bullshit. You look at Macron's face when he caught to realise the cameras had picked it up, and he was not fooling around. In fact, what was happening is, as Moose said, they were arriving in the former French colony of Vietnam. So maybe she was just like recreating for Macron what the French experienced in the early 50s when they got chased the fuck out.
No, this whole thing is weird, and it reminds me of nothing more than one of my favourite songs of the 1980s with a great video clip. Those of you who are in Year 8 or Year 9 around 1985 will remember it fondly.
Yeah, this is a real-life version of that 80s. It's a Van Halen classic, right?
It's a Van Halen classic.
And we're going to leave you with a little of that.
Got it bad, got it bad, got it bad.
We'll leave you to work out the rest for yourself in just a moment. Thank you for your company. We're back next week because, as we always say,
stupid never sleeps.
Stupid never sleeps. And this one's for the Macrons. Hope they work it out. Good luck, mate.
Oh, wow, man. Wait a second, man. What do you think the teacher's going to look like this year? Got it bad, got it bad. I'm not the teacher. I got it bad, so bad. I'm not the teacher. Aaron, ministers, we're back. I brought my pencil. Give me something to write on.
They released jails from all over the world. They released them to the world, the Congo and Africa. Many, many people come from the Congo. I don't know what that is, but they came from the Congo. And all over the world they came in, opened their jails, Venezuela.